The frontier town of Silver Creek lay cradled between rolling hills and endless prairie, its wooden buildings weathered by sun, wind, and storms. Dust swirled along the main street, carried by the restless evening breeze. Horses stamped at their posts outside the saloon, and the faint jingle of spurs echoed across wooden boardwalks. At the heart of this town stood a man both respected and feared, Sheriff James Callahan. His figure was unmistakable, a broad-shouldered lawman with a weathered face, a revolver slung low on his hip, and eyes the color of storm clouds. In a world where justice often bent to the will of outlaws, James Callahan stood firm. To the people of Silver Creek, his badge was not just brass and shine. It was survival. But a badge is not without weight. James often wondered if, in carrying the law upon his chest, he had left no room for a heart beneath it. By day, he kept order, settling disputes, standing watch, and protecting his people. By night, when the town had gone quiet and lanterns burned low, James sat alone in his office. The tick of the clock was his only companion, a reminder that time itself was slipping away. He thought of the years sacrificed, a wife he never took, a family he never raised, laughter that never filled his home, all traded for a life spent staring down the barrel of a gun, chasing shadows across the prairie. And one shadow haunted him more than the rest. Cole Dawson. The name alone was enough to harden James's jaw. Dawson was the kind of outlaw whose legend grew darker with each passing season. Trains derailed, stagecoaches plundered, ranches left in ruin, and those who stood in his way often did not live to tell of it. Years ago, Dawson and his gang had raided Silver Creek itself, leaving scars the town had not forgotten. James swore then and there, before his God, his town, and his badge, that he would bring Dawson to justice, dead or alive. It was not merely a vow of duty. It was personal. Too many lives had been lost. Too many graves dug beneath the prairie sky. To the people of Silver Creek, Sheriff Callahan was more than a man. He was a fortress of law in a land teetering on the edge of chaos. Men tipped their hats when he passed. Women offered cautious smiles, knowing his watchful eyes kept their families safe. Children whispered tales of his bravery, daring one another to stand tall like the sheriff when trouble came knocking. Yet none knew the loneliness behind his eyes. None saw the quiet ache that came when he removed the badge at night and placed it on his desk, staring at it as though it were both a crown and a curse. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, James entered the Silver Spur Saloon. The room fell quiet for a moment. Men playing cards straightened their backs. Laughter dulled to murmurs. The barkeep, Tom Hensley, gave a respectful nod. "Evening, Sheriff." "Usual." James gave a faint smile. "Just coffee tonight." Tom chuckled, pouring the steaming black liquid into a chipped mug. "You're the only man I know who can sit in a saloon and order coffee." James took the mug, his voice steady. "Keeps me sharp. Can't afford to be slow in this town." A rancher nearby, his face red with drink, leaned over. "Don't reckon Dawson's the type to care how sharp you are, Sheriff. Word is he's riding this way again. Some folks say you'll never catch him. He's a ghost." The room stiffened at the name. James set down his mug, his gaze locking on the rancher. "Ghost or not, Dawson bleeds like any man. And I gave my word. He won't haunt Silver Creek again." The rancher swallowed hard and looked away. The saloon returned to its uneasy chatter. Later, James walked back to his office, the stars scattered above like silver dust. He unlocked the door, sat at his desk, and stared at the wanted poster pinned to the wall. Cole Dawson, $5,000 reward, dead or alive. The sketch was crude, but the sneer in Dawson's face was unmistakable. James leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking beneath him. "Someday," he muttered, his voice low, almost like a prayer. "Someday, it'll be you and me." He poured himself another cup of coffee, though his hands trembled. He wasn't afraid of Cole Dawson, not in the way men feared a gunman. What unsettled him was the creeping thought that his life had become defined by this chase. If Dawson fell, what then? Would there be anything left for James Callahan beyond duty and vengeance? Outside, The wind carried the sound of hooves, a lone rider approaching town. James didn't look up from his desk. Riders came and went. But this one would carry with her the weight of fate itself. For on that horse rode Evelyn Dawson, the outlaw's daughter, the woman who would unravel the very oath Sheriff James Calder had built his life upon. And so, as Silver Creek slept beneath the starlit sky, a storm was already gathering. Not the kind born of thunder and rain, but the storm of a man's heart, of duty against desire, of law against love. The sheriff's oath had kept him alive, kept his town safe, and kept his soul chained. But when Evelyn Dawson crossed his path, those chains would begin to break. And James Calder would discover that no badge, no gun, and no oath could protect a man from the power of a hidden heart. Morning broke over Silver Creek in a blaze of gold. The prairie grass shimmered with dew, and the wooden town stirred awake with the groan of wagon wheels and the calls of merchants setting out their wares. The air was sharp and cool, but by noon, the heat would press down like an iron hand. Sheriff James Calder stepped from his office, hat in hand, his gaze sweeping across the main street. It was the same ritual every morning. Count the wagons, watch for trouble, let the people know their lawman stood guard. But on this morning, the rhythm of Silver Creek shifted. Down the road, a lone rider approached, the dust rising with each step of her weary horse. Her figure, small against the horizon, grew clearer as she neared. She sat tall in the saddle, though her clothes were travel-worn. A wide-brimmed hat shadowed her face, but even from a distance, there was something arresting about her presence, something that made conversations falter and eyes follow. The first sight, James narrowed his eyes. A stranger was nothing unusual in Silver Creek. Drifters, ranch hands, bounty hunters, they all passed through. But this woman carried herself differently. There was no slouch of weariness, no careless looseness of a drifter. Instead, there was purpose. She reined her horse near the well in the town square and dismounted with practiced ease. Holding her hat low, she began to draw water, her gloved hands steady though her shoulders hinted at exhaustion. The townsfolk stole glances. Women whispered. Men leaned against posts, curious. James's boots carried him forward, slow but certain. He stopped a few paces away, voice firm but polite. "You're new to Silver Creek." She looked up then, and for the first time, James saw her eyes. Hazel, bright yet guarded, as though they held more than they revealed. "That I am," she answered softly, brushing a loose strand of chestnut hair from her cheek. "Just passing through. Looking for work, if there's any honest to be had." James studied her, the way he would a stranger who might be friend or foe. Something about her tugged at him, though he couldn't place it. "And your name?" he asked. She hesitated. A shadow crossed her face, as though the truth itself weighed heavy. At last, she spoke. "Evelyn. Evelyn Dawson." The shock of a name. The word struck him harder than any outlaw's bullet. Dawson, the name he had sworn to hunt down. The name etched in anger upon his soul. Cole Dawson's daughter. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Whispers rippled like wind through dry grass. James's jaw tightened. Every instinct told him to put her under guard, to question her, to drag her name through the dust until he knew why she was here. But when his gaze returned to her face, he found no trace of guile. Only weary courage. "You understand what that name carries in this town," he said carefully. Her eyes did not waver. "I do, but I'm not my father, Sheriff. I left that life behind. I came here for work, not trouble." Suspicion and curiosity. James's mind raced. Could this be some trick of Cole Dawson's? A way to infiltrate, to weaken his resolve? Or was she truly running from the shadow of her father's sins? "Silver Creek don't take kindly to outlaws or their kin," he warned. "I didn't come here to be welcomed," Evelyn replied. "Only to survive." The honesty in her tone unsettled him more than a lie would have. Finally, he tipped his hat. "You'll find work at the Mercantile. Mr. Halperin's always needing a steady hand. But know this, if I catch wind of anything tying you back to your father's gang, I'll be the first to put you in irons." Her lips curved, not in defiance, but in something like sad acceptance. "I wouldn't expect anything less. Life in town. Over the next days, Evelyn settled into the mercantile, her presence sparking endless gossip. Some said she was a spy for her father. Others swore she was here to start anew. Children were drawn to her kindness. Women eyed her with suspicion. And men found excuses to linger near the store, drawn by her quiet beauty. James watched from the shadows, his lawman's instincts urging caution. But another part of him, one he long buried, found itself drawn to her strength. She worked hard, head held high, though the weight of judgment pressed upon her. Sheriff confronts Evelyn. One evening, he found her closing the mercantile, the lantern casting a soft glow across her face. "You've stirred up Silver Creek," James said. She locked the door, then turned to him with tired eyes. "I suppose my name does that more than I ever could. You could have chosen anywhere else. Why here?" Evelyn's gaze drifted toward the horizon. "Because Silver Creek is the one place he wouldn't think to find me. My father doesn't know I'm here. And if he did, he'd never believe I'd come to the town of the man who swore to bring him down." Her words struck him with a mix of admiration and unease. She had walked straight into the lion's den, knowing full well who guarded it. Inner conflict, Sheriff's thoughts. That night, James lay awake, staring at the ceiling of his small quarters. He should have driven her out. Her bloodline alone was a threat to his oath. But when he looked at her, he didn't see Cole Dawson's cruelty. He saw fire, honesty, a woman who bore the sins of her father but refused to be defined by them. And against his will, he felt something stir. Not trust, not yet, but something more dangerous. Curiosity, foreshadowing, town's unease. In the saloon, whispers grew. Some men wanted her gone. Others wanted her for themselves. "She's Dawson's blood," a ranch hand muttered over whiskey. "A snake's still a snake, no matter how pretty the skin." Another replied, "Maybe, but I've seen the way the sheriff looks at her. He's watching her close, maybe too close." Rumors spread like wildfire, and already the fragile balance of Silver Creek began to shift. Evelyn Dawson had arrived with nothing but a weary horse and a heavy name. Yet already she had set Silver Creek ablaze with whispers and suspicion. Sheriff James Calder told himself he kept her close to protect his town, to guard against treachery. But deep within, he knew the truth was not so simple. For every glance he stole, every word they shared, chipped away at the oath he had built his life upon. And soon, the shadows of her past and his own would draw them both into a storm neither could escape. Days turned into weeks, and though Evelyn Dawson tried to make Silver Creek her home, her last name clung to her like dust in the wind. No matter how hard she worked, no matter how kind her smile, the townsfolk never let her forget the blood she carried. Whispers followed her through the mercantile, through the churchyard on Sundays, through every step on the wooden boardwalks. "That's Dawson's girl. She's got outlaw blood. You watch, it'll show itself soon enough." Why would the sheriff let her stay? Yet Evelyn did not bow beneath the weight. She lifted her chin, met their stares, and carried herself with quiet grace. She swept floors, stocked shelves, and tended to customers with steady hands. The children adored her, drawn to her warmth, her laughter, the way she always had peppermint sticks tucked in her apron pocket. But for every smile she gave, she felt the shadow of her father's sins pressing closer. And though she tried to hide it, Sheriff James Calder saw it all. Sheriff's watchful eye. James often found himself lingering near the mercantile, his excuse being duty. But in truth, it was something more. He told himself he watched her to keep Silver Creek safe, to make sure Cole Dawson's daughter wasn't a spy, a thief, a snake in the grass. But in the stolen moments, he saw things that didn't fit the picture of an outlaw's kin. He saw Evelyn kneeling to comfort a crying child, slipping a loaf of bread into the hands of a hungry boy whose family couldn't pay. He saw her endure the cutting remarks of townsfolk without bitterness, her dignity never faltering. Every glimpse tangled the sheriff deeper in a conflict he could not name. One evening, as dusk painted the sky in hues of rose and violet, James entered the mercantile where Evelyn was sweeping the floor. The bell above the door jingled softly, and she glanced up, surprise flickering in her eyes. "Sheriff Calder," she said, her voice steady but guarded. "Come to inspect the stock?" "Or the stockkeeper?" James removed his hat, setting it on the counter. "Just making my rounds. You seem to make them more often here than anywhere else," she said with a hint of smile. His eyes narrowed, though not unkindly. "And you don't seem much surprised by that." Evelyn leaned on the broom. "Where I come from, men watch women for two reasons. One, suspicion. The other's interest. Can't say I know which yours is yet." Her boldness caught him off guard, though his face betrayed nothing. "Let's just say I haven't decided myself." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Only the creak of the wooden floorboards and the ticking of the wall clock filled the air. Then James straightened, reclaiming his hat. "Be careful, Miss Dawson. Folks in this town don't forgive easy. And neither do I." Her gaze softened, though her words cut true. "Then perhaps we're more alike than you'd care to admit." Evelyn's private burden. Later that night, Evelyn sat by the small fire in her rented room above the mercantile. She pulled from her satchel a worn locket, opening it to reveal a faded photograph. Her mother, long gone. Evelyn's fingers trembled as she traced the image. "Why did you love him, Mama?" she whispered. "Why did you give your heart to a man who brought only ruin?" Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away. She would not be broken. Not here. Not now. Still, she could not escape the truth. The sins of her father were carved into her name, and no matter how far she ran, they followed her like a ghost. Town gossip and rising tension. In the saloon, the talk grew bolder. "I don't care what she says," a ranch hand spat. "Blood tells the truth. She's Dawson's kin, and sooner or later, she'll show her true colors." Another nodded. "And the sheriff, what's he thinking? Letting her walk free?" Folks are starting to wonder if Calder's judgment's getting cloudy. Tom Hensley, the barkeep, polished a glass and shook his head. "Careful what you say. The sheriff hears you talking like that. He'll set you straight." But already, seeds of doubt were sown, and doubt spreads fast in a town where trust is as fragile as glass. Sheriff's reflection, haunted by oath. James sat alone in his office, staring once more at Cole Dawson's wanted poster. The outlaw's eyes seemed to sneer at him from a paper. "You think you've got me cornered, don't you?" James muttered. "Think you've tied my hands by sending her here." He rubbed a hand over his face, exhaustion heavy in his bones. "But if this is your game, Dawson, you'll lose. Because I don't bend. Not for you. Not for anyone." And yet, even as he spoke the words, he knew the truth was more complicated. For each day Evelyn stayed in Silver Creek, his resolve grew harder to hold. His badge demanded suspicion. His heart whispered something else. Foreshadowing, the past draws near. As summer deepened, Evelyn's life in Silver Creek grew steadier, though always under the shadow of whispers. She found small joys, the kindness of children, the rare smile from a townswoman who dared to see her apart from her name, the quiet moments when the sheriff's gaze softened just enough to reveal something more than duty. But the frontier had a way of unearthing buried truths. Outlaws moved like wolves across the prairie, and whispers of Cole Dawson's gang reached Silver Creek once more. Evelyn dreamed of gunfire in the night, of her father's shadow falling across her path. She woke in a cold sweat, clutching her locket, praying the life she sought to build would not be torn away. And Sheriff James Calder, torn between his oath and the pull of something he dared not name, watched her with eyes that saw both danger and desire. Silver Creek believed it knew the truth, that a Dawson could never escape the darkness of blood. But James Calder was beginning to see another truth, one far more dangerous. For when suspicion turns to longing and duty bends toward forbidden love, even the strongest lawman can find himself standing on a knife's edge. And soon, that edge would cut. The town of Clearwater had fallen silent under the blanket of night. Only the chirping of crickets and the soft creak of a hanging lantern in the sheriff's office broke the hush. Sheriff James Callahan sat behind his desk, a single candle flickering against the polished wood. The reports lay open, but his eyes lingered on the window instead, on the road that stretched toward the hills, toward her. Eliza. Her name whispered through his thoughts like a hymn he had no right to sing. She was the daughter of Silas Cain, a name every lawman in the territory knew as a curse. And yet, her laughter, her gentleness, her unshakable resilience had lodged themselves in James's heart like an arrow he couldn't pull free. Still, duty pulled at him like chains. He could not forget the oaths he'd sworn, the oath to uphold the law, to protect Clearwater, to bring Silas to justice. And now, with every visit, every stolen glance, he felt that oath cracking under the weight of forbidden love. Transition into the meeting. The following evening, the moon spilled its silver light across the meadow just beyond the river. James had told himself he wouldn't go. He had promised himself that this time he would resist. But the sheriff was a man, not a saint. And when Eliza stepped from the shadows of the trees, the world seemed to hold its breath. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair tied back loosely, but her presence carried a quiet fire that lit the night brighter than the moon itself. "Eliza, you came." "James, I shouldn't have. Every time I see you, I risk more than I can bear to lose." "Eliza, and yet here you are." Her smile trembled, not from mockery, but from the weight of the same impossible choice. Build tension through dialogue and confession. They walked side by side along the meadow, their hands brushing but never daring to intertwine. The air was filled with the sweet scent of wildflowers, but beneath the beauty lay tension sharp as a knife. "Eliza, you haunt my father. I know it. I see it in your eyes every time his name is spoken. And yet, you look at me as though I'm not his daughter. James, you're not your father. Whatever blood runs through your veins does not define you. I've seen your kindness, your strength. You've built a life out of hardship, not crime." Eliza, tears glinting in the moonlight. "But if you catch him, if you bring him in, you destroy me too. He is all the family I have left." Her words struck him deeper than any bullet could. James stopped walking, turning to face her. His jaw was clenched, his chest rising and falling with the storm inside him. "James, Eliza, tell me the truth. Where is he hiding? Where has Silas gone?" The silence between them stretched taut, filled with crickets, with wind, with the racing of two hearts at war. Finally, Eliza lowered her eyes. "Eliza, brokenly, if I tell you, you'll put him in irons. If I stay silent, you'll keep chasing him, and every time I see you, I'll wonder if it's the last." "James, then tell me nothing. Let me carry this burden alone. But don't ask me to stop loving you." The moment of forbidden intimacy. The words left him before he could stop them. And in that moment, under the silver glow of the moon, Eliza lifted her gaze. There was fear in her eyes, fear of loss, fear of betrayal. But there was also something undeniable, something fierce and tender. She stepped closer, her hand trembling as it touched his cheek. "Eliza, whisper, and don't ask me to stop loving you, Sheriff." Their lips met, tentative at first, then with a desperate urgency, as though both knew the world would tear them apart come morning. The kiss was not simply passion. It was a promise, a confession, a breaking of every law written on James's badge. And yet, in that fleeting moment, it felt like the truest law of all. Conflict immediately follows intimacy. But as quickly as it came, reality returned. A twig snapped in the distance. James's instincts sharpened, his hand reaching for his revolver. Eliza clutched his arm. "Eliza, urgent, wait. It could be one of my father's men. If they find us here, James, then I'll face them. I won't let harm come to you." They waited, breathless, until the sound faded back into the night. But the reminder was clear. Every stolen moment carried danger. When they finally parted, James lingered in the meadow long after Eliza had gone. He stared at the stars, their cold distance mocking the fire in his chest. He knew this could not last. Sooner or later, the truth would demand its price. Sooner or later, he would be forced to choose between the law in his hand and the love in his heart. And as the sheriff walked back toward town, his boots heavy in the dust, the badge on his chest had never felt so much like a shackle. Morning light broke over Clearwater, painting the dusty streets in gold. But beneath the town's surface calm, unease was beginning to stir. People whispered in corners, their eyes flicking toward the sheriff's office. Something in the air had shifted, a sense that the lawman who had once stood like a pillar was carrying secrets he would not name. Sheriff James Callahan felt it too. Each step he took down Main Street was met with half-smiles, cautious nods, and conversations that died as he passed. For years, his presence had been enough to silence trouble. Now, he felt the weight of suspicion clinging to him like a shadow. And he knew why. It was not just the outlaw he hunted. It was the outlaw's daughter, the woman who haunted his every thought. Scene shift in the saloon. That afternoon, James entered the Rusted Spur Saloon to gather word on Silas Cain's movements. The piano played a lively tune, but the laughter felt strained, like an actor's mask. His deputy, Tom Fletcher, leaned against the bar, his hat pulled low. Tom, quiet, cautious sheriff. Folks are talking. They say you've been riding out at night, that you've got business in the hills you ain't sharing. James, firm, guarded. Since when do I answer to gossip? Tom, since whispers turn into doubt. Since a lawman's shadow grows darker than the outlaw he chases. James's jaw tightened. Tom had been at his side for years, loyal, sharp, and watchful. If even Tom had noticed his absences, then the danger was closer than he wanted to admit. Shift to Eliza, her own conflict. Far beyond the town, Eliza Cain moved through her father's hideout with unease heavy in her heart. The men who followed Silas were suspicious by nature, their eyes sharp, their trust scarce. They had noticed her slipping away at night, her distracted glances, the quiet smile she tried to hide. Silas, gruff, watchful, you've been restless, girl. Slipping into the dark when you think I'm not watching. Who is it that holds your attention, Eliza? She froze under her father's gaze. Silas Cain was a man carved by hardship and crime, but when it came to his daughter, his eyes softened, if only a little. Eliza, hesitant, no one, Papa. I only walk to clear my head. The hills are quiet. They make me feel free. Silas, narrowing his eyes, free is dangerous. Remember that. Freedom gets people caught. Freedom gets people killed. She nodded, but her heart pounded with the secret she held, the secret that could destroy them both. Suspicion spreads in town, a hint of betrayal forming. Back in Clearwater, rumors gathered strength. The blacksmith swore he'd seen the sheriff riding toward the river at midnight. The schoolteacher whispered she had spotted him lingering near the meadow, his horse tied in the brush. The whispers reached ears eager to twist them, ears that had long envied James Callahan's position. One of Silas's informants in town carried the news back to the outlaw. The sheriff rides by moonlight. And he ain't alone. James and Eliza meet again, but the tone has shifted. That evening, under a sky heavy with clouds, James and Eliza met at the edge of the meadow. Their embrace was tender, but both carried unease. Eliza, anxious, they're watching me, James. My father, his men. If they find out about us. James, steady, but grim, then I'll stand against them all. Against him, against anyone. But I fear it isn't just his men anymore. Folks in town are beginning to see what I've tried to hide. Eliza, we're running out of time. The wind rustled through the tall grass, as though echoing her words. James, pleading, then tell me, Eliza. Tell me where Silas is. If I bring him in, if this chase ends, maybe, just maybe, we can have a life without shadows. Eliza, tears welling. You asked me to choose between the only family I have and the only love I've ever known. How can I do that? They held each other as though the night itself might shatter, both knowing the choice would soon be forced upon them. The first real sign of betrayal, Deputy Tom takes notice. Unbeknownst to them, a figure stood hidden beyond the tree line. Deputy Tom had followed the sheriff that night, suspicion gnawing at his loyalty. His eyes widened as he saw the truth with his own eyes. The sheriff in the arms of Silas Cain's daughter. His hand clenched at his side. He respected James, but betrayal to the badge was no small matter. The law was meant to be blind, impartial, and here was his own sheriff blinded by love. When James returned to town, he felt the shift more keenly than ever. His deputy's words were shorter. The townsfolk's eyes lingered too long. And in the outlaws' camp, Silas Kane sharpened his knives, vowing to uncover who had stolen his daughter's loyalty. The noose of suspicion tightened from both sides. And James knew, soon, his secret would not just endanger him and Eliza. It would endanger everyone caught between a lawman's duty and a daughter's love. The winds shifted over Clearwater. The townsfolk felt it in their bones. Change was coming. The sheriff's once iron presence now carried cracks, and whispers ran faster than wildfire. Inside the sheriff's office, James sat at his desk, staring at the badge that gleamed in the lamplight. The weight of that small star had never felt heavier. It bound him to law, to justice, to the people who trusted him. But it also bound him away from the woman who had claimed his heart. The door creaked open. Deputy Tom Fletcher entered, his face hard, his jaw set. He closed the door behind him with a quiet thud that sounded more like judgment than accident. "Tom," flatly, "I followed you last night." "James," tensing, voice low, "and what did you see?" "Tom, I saw my sheriff holding Silas Kane's daughter, whispering to her like a man who'd forgotten the law he swore to uphold." The silence that followed was sharp as a knife. James rose slowly from his chair, his hand brushing the badge as though it might steady him. "James, quiet but firm, you don't understand, Tom." "Tom, angry, bitter, don't I? I've ridden by your side for years, James. I watched you chase outlaws, bury good men, fight for this town. And now, you're the one bringing danger to our doorstep. You're sleeping in the enemy's shadow." James's voice trembled, not with fear, but with the anguish of a man caught in an impossible truth. "James, I love her, Tom. I never meant for it to happen, but it did. And now my heart's chained to hers." Tom's face hardened further. "Tom, then you betrayed us all. The law, this town, and me." Shift to Silas Kane. Betrayal uncovered from the other side. That same night, in the outlaws' camp, Silas Kane received word from one of his scouts. Scout, grinning, "Cruel, sheriff's been meeting with your girl, Silas." Saw him together in the meadow, close as two lovers at a wedding. Silas froze. His hands, rough from years of crime, clenched into fists. His eyes burned with a fury deeper than rage, the fury of a father who felt his daughter stolen. Silas, growling, "So the sheriff thinks he can court my blood while wearing the badge that hunts me? He'll learn what it means to cross a Kane." He stormed from the fire, his men rising to follow. Eliza caught sight of him, her heart leaping in her chest. "Eliza, urgent, Papa, wait. Please, it's not what you think." Silas, snarling, "Don't lie to me, girl. Your silence was betrayal enough. You let him in. You let him near." Her voice broke with desperation. Eliza, pleading, "I love him, Papa. I can't change it. I can't stop it." The camp fell silent. Even hardened outlaws turned their eyes away from the storm in Silas's face. For a long moment, he said nothing, his chest heaving. Then his voice cut through the night like a blade. "Silas, then he dies, and you'll watch. The sheriff makes his choice, duty versus heart." Back in Clearwater, James saddled his horse under the cloak of darkness. His decision was made. He could not sit idle while Silas discovered the truth. If blood was to spill, it would not be hers. Deputy Tom intercepted him at the edge of town. "Tom," blocking the road, "you're riding to her, aren't you?" "James, grim, I have to. Silas knows. He'll strike, and she'll be caught in the middle." "Tom," coldly, "then let him strike. That's justice. That's what the law demands." "James," with fire, "No, Tom. That's vengeance. And I won't let her pay for her father's sins." For a moment, their hands hovered near their holsters, two men standing at the crossroads of loyalty and betrayal. But Tom, though wounded, stepped aside. Tom, bitter but soft, "Ride then. But know this, when you come back, it won't be as my sheriff. It'll be as a man who chose love over the badge." James tipped his hat, the pain of lost brotherhood cutting deeper than any outlaw's bullet. Then he spurred his horse into the night. The reckoning, confrontation in the hills. The hills loomed dark and jagged under a storm-heavy sky. James rode hard, the wind biting, his heart pounding louder than the thunder above. He reached the edge of Silas's camp just as voices rose in fury. Eliza stood before her father, her arms outstretched as though her small frame could shield James from a hail of bullets yet to come. Silas, roaring, step aside. Eliza, he's no savior. He's the lawman who'll hang me, the man who's poisoned your heart. Eliza, screaming, he's the man I love. At that moment, James rode into the firelight, his horse kicking dust, his revolver gleaming. James, calling out, Silas Kane, if it's me you want, then here I stand. But don't punish her for loving me. Whatever your quarrel, it's with me. The outlaws bristled, hands on their weapons. But Silas raised a hand, halting them. His glare locked onto James, a duel of wills under the stormlit sky. Silas, coldly, you come wearing a badge, yet speaking as a suitor. Which are you, sheriff, lawman, or lover? James, defiantly, I am both. And tonight I'll prove it. If you think to kill me, then do it yourself. But I'll not raise a hand against your daughter, nor against the truth of what binds us. The storm breaks, literal and emotional. Lightning split the sky, thunder shaking the hills. Rain began to pour, drenching the camp, washing dust into mud. Eliza cried out, torn between the two men who defined her world, her father and her love. Silas drew his pistol, his hand steady despite the storm. James did not flinch. His revolver stayed at his side, his eyes locked on Eliza instead. James, soft, to Eliza, whatever happens tonight, know this, I'd give my life for you. Her sob echoed against the hills. The rain hammered down as father, daughter, and lawman stood frozen in a triangle of fate. The outlaws waited, the storm raged, and destiny held its breath. Silas's finger tightened on the trigger. James stood unarmed before him, and Eliza's heart shattered with the weight of the choice no one could escape. The reckoning had come. The storm crashed over the outlaw camp, rain turning dust into rivers of mud. Lanterns sputtered and hissed, their light fighting against the blackness. In the center of it all stood three figures. Silas Kane with his pistol raised, Sheriff James Callahan unflinching before him, and Eliza Kane caught between the two men who claimed her loyalty. The outlaws formed a circle, their eyes flicking from their leader to the sheriff. Lightning split the sky, casting the scene in brief flashes of white. Silas, furious, voice like thunder, you wear the badge that hunts me, yet you dare to hold my daughter's heart? You've made her a traitor to her blood. James, firm, steady, she's no traitor, Silas. She's her own soul, and the law you've run from all your life doesn't change that. Eliza, pleading, sobbing, stop this. Both of you, please. I can't lose either of you. But the storm drowned her cries. Silas's hand tightened on his pistol. James took a single step forward, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. The duel of wills, the father and the lawman. Silas, snarling, you've hunted me for years, Callahan. Every town I've passed through, your shadow followed. You wanted me in irons, dead or alive. Tell me, why shouldn't I end this chase right now? James, defiant, because killing me won't save you. The law will come, with or without me. But if you spill my blood tonight, you'll stain your daughter's soul forever. Silas's jaw clenched. His eyes flicked toward Eliza, her face pale, her body trembling. For the first time, doubt flickered in the outlaw's hardened gaze. But pride was stronger than reason. Deputy Tom enters, betrayal from within. Suddenly, a shout rose over the storm. A group of riders appeared on the ridge, torches blazing through the rain. Clearwater's men, led by Deputy Tom Fletcher, descended like judgment from the heavens. Tom, calling out sheriff, step aside. The law will handle this. James's heart sank. He hadn't wanted the town dragged into this. Not tonight, not like this. The outlaws scrambled for cover, rifles raised. Tension exploded into chaos. Shots rang out, bullets slicing through the rain. Horses reared, men shouted. The storm had become a battlefield. James caught between law and love. James drew his revolver at last. Not at Silas, not at Eliza, but at the men firing around them. He ducked behind a wagon, pulling Eliza to safety. James, urgent, to Eliza, stay low. Don't let them see you. Eliza, panicked, James, please stop this. They'll kill each other. He looked across the camp and saw Tom, his deputy, aiming not at Silas, but at Eliza. James, shouting Tom no. He lunged, knocking her to the ground just as a shot split the air. The bullet grazed his shoulder, spinning him into the mud. Pain seared, but he pushed himself up. James, hoarse, furious. You raise a gun at her again, Tom, and you'll answer to me, badge or no badge. Tom's face twisted, torn between loyalty and anger. The rain plastered his hair to his face, his hand trembling on the pistol. Tom, shouting back, she's his blood, James. She'll betray you like he has. Can't you see it? The turning point, Silas's choice. Through the gunfire and chaos, Silas Kane stood frozen. He watched the sheriff take a bullet for his daughter, watched him shield her with his own body. The outlaw's grip on his pistol loosened as the truth struck him like lightning. Silas, muttering to himself, he'd die for her. He'd die for her. For the first time, the hardened criminal lowered his weapon. His voice cut through the storm, booming over the chaos. Silas, shouting enough. The gunfire slowed, the men hesitating at their leader's command. Silas stepped forward, his pistol dropping into the mud. He raised his hands, eyes blazing with something unfamiliar, surrender. Silas, to James, horse take me. End this chase. But if you've any shred of honor, swear before God and man you'll protect her. James, bleeding but steady, met his gaze. James, solemnly, on my life, Silas. I'll guard her with everything I have. The betrayal resolved, Tom's downfall. But Tom was not satisfied. Rage twisted his features as he strode forward, his pistol still raised. Tom, furious, you can't be serious, Sheriff. He's a murderer, a thief. You'll let him live because of her. James, grim, I'll let him face trial. That's the law, not your vengeance. Tom sneered, his hand tightening. For a heartbeat, it seemed he would shoot Silas then and there. But James moved faster. His revolver barked once, the shot echoing like thunder. Tom's gun flew from his hand, clattering into the mud. Silence fell, broken only by the rain. James, pained, voice heavy, you forgot what it means to wear the badge, Tom. It ain't about pride. It ain't about revenge. It's about justice. Tom stumbled back, his eyes wide with shock and betrayal. The men of Clearwater disarmed him, dragging him from the battlefield as the storm finally began to ease. Resolution, the choice of the heart. At dawn, the rain had passed. The outlaw camp lay silent, weapons discarded, smoke rising from dying fires. Silas Kane, bound but unbroken, sat with his daughter at his side. Silas, softly, to Eliza, you've always been stronger than me, girl. Stronger in the ways that matter. If this man's heart is your choice, then I'll not curse it. Eliza's tears fell as she clasped her father's rough hands. James stood nearby, exhausted but resolute. The men of Clearwater looked to him, waiting for judgment. He raised his voice, steady and clear. James, Silas Kane will stand trial. By the law, not by lynch rope. That is justice. And as for his daughter, she's no criminal. She's guilty only of love, and love is no crime. The crowd shifted, uneasy, but none dared oppose the sheriff's word. The final piece. Weeks later, the town of Clearwater returned to its rhythms. Silas Kane's trial loomed, but the bloodshed had been stayed. James bore the scar of that night, both on his shoulder and in his heart. Eliza walked beside him through the streets, heads turning, whispers following, but James no longer cared. The choice had been made. He had not abandoned the law. He had not abandoned love. He had carved a path where both could survive, though the cost had been high. As the sun dipped over the frontier, James Callahan removed his badge, turning it in his hands. It was no longer a shackle. It was a symbol, one that reminded him that justice and the heart need not be enemies, if only a man had the courage to stand between them. And with Eliza at his side, he knew the sheriff's hidden heart was hidden no longer.